Have your attention, please. We begin our meeting. And Councilmember Ann Snavy, can you verify that we have a quorum present?
We do.
Quorum being present, I declare this meeting open. Councilmember John Faust, would you have an invocation for us, please?
I will. Dear Lord, please guide this council and our mayor to benefit the city, to be with our employees, be with our citizens, be with our soldiers that soar over the seas. Please bless us all. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. And Councilmember Kirk Bradfield, would you please sign off, please?
Sure.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Council, you have in front of you our agenda, and I need to modify the agenda. We're going to have an executive session at the end for legal purposes, and I would like to have a motion to adopt the agenda as amended.
Motion to adopt the agenda as amended.
And I have a second, please.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carried. Under old business, item 1, consideration and approval of revisions to alcohol ordinances number 2022-02. And we'll ask our city manager, Sonia James, if she will bring this forward.
Absolutely. So in an effort to evaluate some of the economic needs and long-term viability and sustainability of our downtown, we would like to amend certain parts of the current alcohol ordinance to make some allowances for some new types of businesses that are wanting to open up in our vibrant downtown. So we have looked at our alcohol ordinance and saw some restrictiveness, as in we don't allow happy hour and things of that nature. So we have been working with Mr. Siphon to get legal's opinion on vetting some of these current outdated ordinances, and I believe they were set into place in 1979, and a lot of things have changed since 1979. So we want to get council's direction on how you would like to proceed with updating this alcohol ordinance. So, do you want to jump in, Mr. Siphon? Do you want me to go through the sections?
As Ms. James has said, we have been working on trying to revise certain provisions. For some reason, I've been really busy the last 2 weeks, so I didn't get a chance to give them a draft until today. Hopefully they provided in your packet proposed revisions to certain sections, and hopefully you have that. The first section's just dealing with applications, and I may need to check with administration and be sure that I have how they're contemplating the application fee to work. So we reworked that a little bit. Section 1039 on the term of the license, there was a penalty provision that we've taken out because we just haven't ever assessed that. So we wanted the ordinance to be consistent with our practice. Section 1040, we're making a change there that with renewal licenses, if there's no changes, that it wouldn't come back before y'all because y'all already approved it once. And so the city manager would just review the renewal applications, be sure that they're just applying for the same thing that they got last year, and if so, administration will approve those renewals, and that'll streamline the process a little bit and also take another item off your plate that, you know, really, when it's a renewal, there's not really much consideration with it. On the package and on premises sales restrictions, the General Assembly, for some reason, which I don't quite understand, now allows you to buy like single bottles of beer. And so we've amended our ordinance to be consistent with that new legislation, which is in section 10-130. On the permitted locations, evidently we have had an independent living facility or an assisted living facility make inquiry about having a pouring license for residents within the facility. And I was looking for some input from the council there, because that's a little bit different from what we have traditionally done. Other cities have allowed it. City administration, it's on the second page, that's subpart F. Hadn't had a chance yet to give me input, but I kind of wanted to get some input from y'all as to how y'all felt about assisted living or group homes being able to have a pouring license. But that is some suggested language. If the council finds that acceptable, and we rework the patio area provisions under 10.315, basically to make it more consistent with our practice that we have allowed patios to be used and allowed alcohol to come out of a serving window where a waiter or waitress doesn't have to carry the drinks through a door and open the door and have to juggle the drinks. So we tried to make that consistent with the real world. So we needed input on the group home assisted living facility, and also needed a little input. We've had an inquiry for what is basically, I guess they're calling it like a high-end specialty beer facility where they would sell high-end beer, sort of similar to, but not the same as the wine specialty shop. And I kind of wanted to get some input from y'all because they were wanting to be relieved of the food requirements, and I don't want to sound snobbish, but sometimes wine shops have a little bit different atmosphere than facilities that just sell only beer. And you know, if you're selling only beer, even if it's high-end specialty beer, and you're not having any food, then, you know, where I grew up, we'd call that a bar, and just a bar.
I think we do too here.
And I was unsure as to how y'all would feel about that, so I wanted some input on that one too. I have a tendency to think if we allow a high-end beer facility that we ought to have a food requirement. You know, otherwise, you know, once you open that door, everybody and his brother is going to say, hey, good old Heineken is a high-end beer, and, you know, we're going to have Heineken, and then they're going to say, you know, Pabst Blue Ribbon's a high-end beer, or whatever, and so then you start getting into administrative interpretations as to what is a high-end beer, and are you being fair to restaurants that have to have food requirements in order to sell their by the drink drinks. And so I think both administration and I were wanting some guidance from the council as to how you felt about a high-end beer facility, and whether we needed to have a food sale requirement for it too, in order to be consistent. But those are, what you have is a draft of those provisions, and as I said, we need some input on how you feel about the assisted living group home having a pouring license, and how you feel about the high-end beer facility. And what we're gonna do to, what requirements we're gonna have for that type of facility. And did I miss anything, Sonia?
No,
or is
no,
that-
sir, you accommodated.
And
So the two areas that we're talking about discussion on, unless someone has something else, would be the part about the independent living facility is one, and then the part about the high-end beer without the food. Would
right.
that be where we're at? So
Yes,
if
sir.
we took those one at a time, let's go with the independent living first, if you don't mind,
Sure, absolutely, sir.
and ask for council's input on that particular area.
David, is there any state restriction on any of these?
There is no state restriction on any of those that I'm aware of. I did an ordinance search and did find one other city that had or allowed pouring license for assisted living facility. So that made me more comfortable that it could be done. As you'll see in the suggested language, they had a food sale requirement. They basically, require them to have at least 50% in food sales, which is, my memory, basically what we require. So that seemed reasonable to me. If they got a kitchen and they're serving food, I would think they could meet the 50% food sale requirement fairly easy.
If I were in assisted living,
I
I
won't
would
do
have
it.
a drink. So.
And I'm gonna be there before long, so I
That's my
can
kids on that one.
Council, coming around, Kurt?
Yeah, I don't believe age should dictate that. State law, there's requirements on the food percentage. As long as that facility meets food percentage, I don't have an issue with them having a license.
John?
Obviously, I can't meet the food facility, they're feeding them 3 meals a day, they're going to meet the food, so,
Well,
and the whole reason you go in there is so they can finish out their last 2 days and be happy, so. I'm fine with it.
So you don't think we should deprive them of their?
absolutely not.
Done?
Yeah, I don't think we ought to deprive them at all.
Mr. Looney?
What is the percentage? 50 sales?
Yeah, for us, it's 50%, 50/50.
I thought so.
No, I keep kidding, my daughter's gonna put me in there quickly, so.
So let's open this
Yeah,
up while we're here.
No, I see no problems.
Looks like we don't have a problem with that. Now, if you need to vote, I will entertain a motion to approve these sections. But let's go to the other one first.
Just needed guidance so that I could polish it and get it in final form for Monday night. So y'all can vote on it Monday.
That's fine. And the next section would be the high-end beer, that, whether or not separate that from the food service that we're gonna require there.
So personally, I suffer a little bit at a location that serves alcohol and there's no food there. I'm sure you can tell that by looking at me, but, so in other words, there are times I wish some of our establishments that already don't have food did. So I would think that if you're gonna serve beer, you ought to have food. And, I kind of mirror David's, thoughts on, if you don't, it's pretty much a bar.
Mhm.
So that's
Any other
where
comments
I'm,
by council on this?
No, I agree with Sonny.
I
I think they gotta have food and we're,
I think
Service.
about our prior, ordinance, there was a restriction, no pool tables in, establishment that serves beer, and that's because of a situation that happened years ago.
Yeah.
I think we're probably beyond that now,
and we have changed to go from 70-30 to 50-50.
yeah.
You know, so I think we've come a long way with it.
Now, my only question is, say they just want to serve alcohol, but they bring in a food truck, how would we look at that?
I don't think they're a restaurant.
This,
That's just my opinion of it.
Well, that's what I was asking.
Yeah.
well, and also when it's written, the specifications are that they have to have a dining facility, sale of food, and they have to have that available during the hours of operation inside of that establishment.
And I guess what I would say on that, it sounds like you are in agreement, we ought to have the food sale requirement. I think administration needs to go back and tell them that to see if they're still interested.
Right.
And no sense in amending the ordinance if they're not still interested.
I don't know that I would be comfortable restricting, I think John mentioned the food truck, or Kirk one. The idea of a restaurant with beer and a food truck combination and trading out the food trucks, the type of food that they serve, I think it's an interesting business concept. And
Well,
have seen it.
Woodstock.
Yeah, Woodstock. So I'm not sure I want to restrict that. Or
but still have that requirement though, right?
Oh, yeah, they have to,
Yeah, it is.
it doesn't have to be in a kitchen in the building, in my mind.
So just for clarification, when staff reaches back out to this, this business that is requesting this, do we ask them if they would be willing to provide food trucks at their location? Does that play into your decision at all?
Well, this might be a little
Let
bit
me
further.
be sure I understand this, because, you know, basically, to me, you're talking about a bar with no kitchen that has a independent third-party food truck come in, and
I don't like.
I don't like that idea.
you know, if we were all reasonable people, I might could live with that, but once you open that door, you know, you're gonna have everybody and his brother say, well, I got a food truck coming, and until they come, I'm gonna sell beer, or sell alcohol. So just, y'all are gonna have to let me think on that, how to make that work, if you're gonna let food truck sales count as food sales when the food trucks are not owned by the
I
establishment.
think that's too iffy.
And not guaranteed.
And
If
not
they don't
guaranteed,
show up
no.
one night, is the business not open? So-
What
And
committee
you know
would this
they're
be
going
kicked to, Steve?
So what this really says is that for purposes of this article, the term full-service kitchen means a kitchen that consists of a minimum of 4 compartments, hot sink, a stove or grill permanently installed, and a refrigerator, all of which must be approved by the health and fire departments, prepared to serve food every hour, and that they are open and prepared to seat X number of people pursuant to the applicable building codes. And I think that may be what the consensus of, that we're trying to come to is is to have that in this particular.
I think they ought to have a kitchen, do, because I think it's
So
hard
if we
when you
utilize
a
this
third
same,
party, when you start getting a third party involved, I think there's gonna be too much controversy over that with not being able to follow our regulations.
Be hard to regulate too.
Yes, I think so.
Staff will reach back out to this requester and let them know that they have to have.
okay. Item 2 is discussion of a conceptual drawing from CPL for downtown restrooms. And I know that we've been slammed as a city because we've taken so long on this project. By the same token, we also want to get it right. We'd rather be slammed for being slow than slammed for being sloppy. So one thing right here, Tara, would you turn that a little bit
This way or no?
that way so that that might be just a little far for us.
Oh.
Also,
We got him here.
We got it.
well, we can see the small one, so.
Yeah.
So let's see who's gonna present that to us.
Marty, I think so.
Well, actually,
And-
We'll ask Sonia to tell us about this, and then we'll allow Mark to come forward with that.
Y'all
Well-
both come up. Come on, Scott.
I've
Well,
got a lot more FaceTime in this group than I have, so.
City Council just had requested a little more information regarding this design and wanted to provide some input of what City Council's thought processes were behind this design. So we just requested that the designers come and just have a talk with City Council. And we have provided the diagrams on your monitors and on the big monitor for you to refer back to if needed. So I'll just absolutely take it away.
I'm Scott Gordon with CPL. Mark Baumgart's our project manager back here in the back.
And take no offense, please, sir. We've shared a lot of time together talking about some of this stuff. You took an ugly building, you didn't do much to help it. And I think, me personally, I want something, this is a landmark location. Some people think it's a landmark structure. I don't think there's anything that indicates that it's historical, it's not old enough, but, and at one point in time, I think we were much more concerned about functionality. And you and I had conversations about bathrooms here, we had conversations about what we're calling the park on the south side. But from my perspective, I would like something that historically looks befitting to our Main Street area.
Sure.
And I think there are some safety issues with this as it relates to internal space. We recently had a drug overdose death in one of our public restrooms. And I read Mark's comments about cameras and all that makes sense, but I'm just concerned. I never was a big proponent of the kind of walk through for the pamphlet thing, but I do see that that's a possibility. I'll also share with you that the sign as it stands is not up to our current codes, and we had somebody write those codes, help us write those codes. Let me think about that. Well, we can skip that part. We don't allow, in the central business district, we don't allow internally lit signs. So I don't know that I want public restroom in 12-inch letters right there at the center. So those are my comments, and I mean, I don't know where that leads us or what.
It sounds like, Mayor and Council wish, we can take we can add aesthetics to the marching orders that we've been given, and
That's just my
come back to you.
So,
We'll take other comments also.
good to see you, sir.
Oh, and thank you. It's good to see you too.
So Scott, looking at what's before us, obviously from space you can tell it's public restrooms.
Sure.
What I'd like to see is something a little more cohesive as far as roof lines.
Sure.
I don't know, I mean, that's going beyond aesthetics.
Oh,
That's structural.
Oh, we understand.
But this thing has a bowl cut.
Sure it
looks
does.
rough.
Sure it does.
And when we talk about the interior, when you're
It's
talking
bad.
about like the pass-through on one side, from these renderings, the facility, like you mentioned, has not been altered much at all.
No.
Such as the teller window still being in place. And so when you look at that and you remove that, well, then you realize what you're removing is light, visibility, and you're also looking at more safety concerns.
Sure.
When we get to the restrooms themselves, I see them marked as male, female, unisex. I want to keep in mind the amenities inside being as modern and applicable to society as possible.
Sure.
A bathroom is a bathroom.
Sure.
If it is a one-stall restroom with a door that can lock, a restroom is a restroom. So those are really where I stand on it. I do agree that the location's phenomenal. I myself have not been opposed to a complete rebuild. That is another cost. Certainly the signage, the roofing, and then like I said, the exterior, the aesthetics portion, being historically more appealing.
Sure.
With gables and such. Ball Ground has restrooms included in their downtown area much smaller than this, but they have a way of blending in.
Sure.
And so it doesn't stick out. So I'll leave you with that.
I think your points are completely achievable. If that's our goal and our new marching orders, I think that's completely achievable.
Well, I want it to be, I don't really want it to stand out, but I want people to be able to find it.
Sure.
So we need to make it where they can find it. I'm with Kurt as far as the bathroom goes. Make them all unisex, that's fine, but you don't know how many people are gonna be in line. I think you know. And then I'm with keeping the structure similar to the town.
Sure.
That old industrial look, it's one thing, just Jasper, so much charm.
Sure.
We have a great downtown, we want it to blend in.
Okay.
And I'm with him, the roof does not blend in.
Yeah, we're not a fan of it either.
Okay, I'm gonna skip over then to Ann, and so I can ask her for her comments also. Sure.
Well, I'd like to see, like they were saying, the 3 restrooms. As far as the front part, I think that's gonna be more trouble than it's worth to leave the pamphlet station open. I think it's gonna invite trouble for us,
Okay.
and we're trying to keep that from happening.
Okay.
So in that respect, I would like to see that gone. Now, I don't know, nobody's mentioned the big, tall,
Yes.
oh, did you? Oh, okay, I missed that.
Yeah, that's gonna go.
Okay,
Does it gotta go? I kinda like it for information. That we
unless
put
you
in
wanna pay for it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what I'm saying. I mean,
I have talked to some people about the restrooms. And there are women out there that would not be as comfortable using a restroom that is also used by men, particularly one that hasn't got the custodian there looking at it after every use. So I'm not so sure about unisex restrooms in a facility like this. I think once you start working on the roof, Scott, what's your idea of that, the exterior walls will have to be replaced?
I think the exterior walls could probably be painted. I think we could mark, I mean, they're in pretty good repair. It's not real brick, it's sort of a modular type brick system. But I believe that because it's already brick-like, that we can work with what's there. If we want to reclad it, then we certainly can look at recladding it.
Well,
There are lots of options out there.
If there's an option to keep it, and that's something we need to look at.
Sure.
But I just, having looked at it, I had a fear that it wasn't gonna take a whole lot of work. And redoing the roof is,
Redoing the roof, there'll be some demolition costs involved in that. There'll be some new structure that goes in there to carry it. But, you know, if the aesthetic is not very appealing, which at this point it isn't because it's an old bank teller building, then that's what it takes to change the aesthetic.
and as for restrooms, we got plenty of time to settle that.
Well, and the building code may have something to say about that. I will share a quick aside. For our office down in Woodstock, we had asked if we could just do 6 single-hole toilets with sinks, 4 sinks out in front. So the toilet rooms would be standalone, the sinks would be standalone, because as many of you may know, the most expensive space in buildings is typically the restrooms in terms of cost per square foot. And if you can separate that up, break it up and make it more regular, you can save some cost and, we were building our own office, we would save some cost. But in the end, the code official said you have to have a dedicated men's room, you have to have a dedicated women's room. So we have a men's room with a sink in it, and a women's room with a sink in it, and we have 3 rooms in the middle that say whatever on the outside. They literally say whatever. And that's the way we overcame it. We put 2 sinks out front in order to service those other restrooms. But the code more than likely is not going to be much different here in terms of ordinance and code. So my suspicion is we're going to have a men's and women's room in order to meet code. And then we will attempt to recapture the space for the third, and it looks like we might have a urinal-only space if we recapture that pamphlet area in the front.
Do you mind if I jump in?
Oh, please, please.
So the idea was not only pamphlets in the front, where you can see what's going on, and it just, and it was also gonna be air conditioned too, so if anybody's out and about and it gets really hot, they have a place to go in. It's all glass, so you can see what's going on, and then it gives you that opportunity to kind of keep the family corralled, or if somebody's waiting, you're cooling down for a minute while the person's using the restroom, and you can get together and go outside.
Kind of puts the rest in the restroom, right?
So there's a bench, yeah, exactly. There's a bench there, and again, that whole area is all glass, so that way you can see what's going on.
I think it would be more beneficial though, as an extra restroom, as to have an air conditioned.
I'd rather have go into our bars than we don't have in restaurants to get cool and if I mean, I just soon tear the thing down and start over.
Well,
understanding
you make a really good point, because that's already all existing storefront,
Yeah.
so all of that has to be ripped out, so you're probably almost there to tear down the whole
Is
thing.
that steel frame, I'm
put up
guessing,
the-
or is it wood frame, or do we even know?
It's a pre-engineered,
Okay.
so it's kind of,
Yeah.
it's kind of strange with,
Yeah.
it's designed just for those type of units when they made them back in the day,
Gotcha.
so,
It's not remarkably sturdy. I mean,
Right.
it accomplishes the goal of creating an enclosure for a teller to do business, but it is not as sturdy as good old-fashioned bricks and mortar construction. It's certainly not as
Right.
adaptable as bricks and mortar construction. In fact, we'll need to probably reinvestigate that roof to see how much it's tied into the wall system, to see if we decrease the rigidity of the wall system by removing the roof. So it's,
That's what I was getting at.
Yeah, there's structural-
Exterior.
again, our original marching order was do it cheap, do it fast, do it quick, and we don't want it to change.
So one of the benefits of delay is that, this is SPOS dollars, special purpose, and as we delay, we continue to accumulate, so.
Good.
And I don't wanna say or suggest that we don't wanna be mindful and frugal, but at the same time, this thing is gonna be here long, whatever we put there, I would like for it to exist longer than this one has, and, there's, again, but I'm just,
No, I agree, I'd rather have the longevity, if we had to invest a little bit more, to have the longevity and a better plan than to try to save a few dollars and not come up with something that's good.
We don't disagree. We do these for municipalities all over the state, and usually these are built more rigid and more robust than less for just the wear and tear that they take.
Right.
As a final comment on this, thank you so much for coming up here.
Oh, yeah.
We appreciate that. But I also want to ask you about time, not so much the dollars as the time. We've been a long time on this process now. Obviously, this is going to take longer because you're going to have to go back. So for the public's information, how much more time is it going to take for this to be re-engineered and until we can send this out to a contractor?
It'll be weeks, not months.
Weeks, not months. I heard it here first.
As long as we can reach a consensus that everyone's happy with, it's just a matter of weeks to pull it back together, not a matter of months.
That's perfect.
and while everybody's together, Scott, I just wanna keep in mind, we are really close to, by the changes that you wanna do, where we almost might have to go back to square one and build a new building. Cause if there's new loads with a new roof, there's new uploads, if structural engineering back then at the time was under a different code, there's a new code now, and so by the time we crunch numbers, they might find out that existing wall system and foundation, because it's actually not on a slab. It's actually about a 3-foot crawl underneath that building.
There's also a tunnel that goes from that building to the bank, by the way.
Oh, is that right?
There is.
Wow, didn't see that. I did crawl under there in that little spot where the opening is, but I didn't see that tunnel, but keep that in mind.
You
We
can
are-
put it over in the bank.
I'm an amateur, I'm certainly I'm an amateur, I designed a little simple bathroom, I may have even one time shared it with Scott years ago when we were really talking more about Perot property, but and we call it that, it's not been named, but I do want you to know that Jim led our reintroductory meeting on Tuesday night, so that project is now moving forward as well, so.
Awesome. Wonderful.
Hopefully we can get some things together and
Very,
give
very
you a shot at that too, so.
I would recommend that maybe you guys consider putting just a small committee together, of a couple, 3 people that we can communicate with in order to design this, so that we can ask questions and sort of draw it the way that is the overriding consensus. What I want to try to avoid, to keep it as weeks, not months, is for us to draw and then come in, no, not quite yet, and draw, no, not quite yet. It'd be great if some of the folks that are really passionate about it could make themselves available. I think we're happy to come up here, sit down with them and get the sketch paper out and sort of knock it out together.
Good idea.
Then have Mark very quickly take a look at whether we can adapt what's there, make it meet with code, or if this is a scrape it and put something there in its place. Obviously, if we have to do a new ground up structure, it's a few more weeks, not a few more months, I think, to complete it. But, you know, we're not talking 90 or 120 days here. We're talking, 6 to 8 weeks once we kind of decide what it is we want. I think that won't be a problem for us to turn.
Got one more comment from,
Two questions. The ADA issue you're talking about is just ingress egress on the front of the facility, not necessarily what's been proposed.
No, this meets ADA the way we had it proposed, but we do have to think about the crosswalks and the
Yes.
grades, and it's a little tricky. I mean, it's not anything we've never dealt with before, but there's a little more to it because we've got overlapping paths coming into this thing. Then we gotta get up into the building, and as Mark said, it's not on a slab, it floats.
Second thing is, you mentioned you've done this for municipalities before. I'd be interested to see what that looks like for that size.
Sure.
What you've.
Well, we've done it for parks, mostly for parks and rec type buildings, and so they're a little more agrarian, a little more utilitarian. They probably won't have the kind of detail we're talking about here with a little nicer materials, a little nicer roof
Okay.
line.
Yeah,
But if you did want to go ground up, we would spend a little time downtown.
yeah. If
we
you-
would
if you
wanna make
still
sure
provide
we
some
capture-
visuals, that'd be wonderful.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure.
One quick last thing, I know you need to move on, but the site, we actually did go outside the box, and if, Dasani, do you mind going back to the first, I think the first image, there you go. So you can see, we did go outside the box because we weren't crazy about the approach to the facility now. There's a lot of landscape it's really hard to get up to it. And so you can see we did change the front a little bit and made it a little bit more approachable. We put wider stairs, we put the required handrails in, and we did a little bit new landscaping to the side, and we put some lighted bollards there, again, for safety. So we have that in the set as an add alternate for the contractor, because that was not part of our marching instructions, but we hated to design this space that was very difficult to get to. So just when you're looking at it, you can see that we did remove the sign. It doesn't, the larger sign, because there's a lot going on in that little spot. So we just wanted to point that out to you, that was not part of our marching orders, but we felt that it would add value to getting in and out of the structure.
And I probably would have gotten a hand smack from their former city manager because that was more than what we talked about.
Right, so that's why you'll see in your packets it's an add alternate.
So to get your ruler out, I probably need some wraps across the knuckles. No, I think the goal was speed and swiftness and cost effectiveness, and that's sort of how we landed where we're at.
Right.
Don't disagree with a single thing y'all have to say. We recognize that what's going on in the downtown. We've been working with you over at Perot, we're working with you at Peace, we get it. And I think if you want something a little nicer, we can certainly deliver it.
thank you so much.
Absolutely.
2016 is when we met in Savannah, I think,
Yeah.
16 or 17.
As they establish that.
We can take Sunday and
So,
and
Is,
have a committee.
That's fine.
Yeah. So let me just ask,
I'm glad to serve, particularly if it's with Jim.
and then you're the two that have worked most on this, so how about,
but I would like to have somebody from staff.
well, and you can get whoever you need, so.
Well, and I'd like to suggest we have a lady be on this, because
Kim,
ladies'
I
restroom.
can, sure.
Ladies' restroom requirements are different than fellas, and I live with two daughters and a wife, so I know that they have very specific things they want, and I think it's important to have that input.
Absolutely.
City manager, do you have a preference?
If Kim wants to serve on it, that's fine. I will give my preferences through her, so.
You have the power of veto anyway.
Exactly.
And it's nice to finally meet you. We
Yes,
talked
sir.
all
We
Yes,
haven't
sir.
told her that yet, Scott, man, come on
That's
now.
fine. Yes, sir.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Hey, thanks for having us up.
Nice to be
See, the
here.
good news for me is I get to take barbecue home for dinner now. Works out
Good to
great.
see you, man.
Hey, y'all take care. I'm really glad to see everybody healthy too. I know a lot of you have struggled, and my family struggles. It's just great to see everybody up and moving, especially that one right there.
Thank
You
you.
might get some argument on that.
Appreciate you guys.
I think it's just being assigned to the committee, we don't need a vote on that, do we?
No, it's just,
Got to.
I closed it.
you pulled it.
Did you want it left open for discussion?
No, that's fine, whatever you want to do, so,
It's distracting.
okay.
Absolutely.
New business.
New business, item one, consideration and approval of the ArcGIS additional user license and upgrades for $27,000. Simon, did you?
So, I know this is gonna come as no shock to anyone, but the secret of Jasper is out. The jewel is out. And, as such, we need to prepare, for, future development. And we, need to provide staff with the tools to prepare for that future development. And with all of the influx of requests coming, we would like to approach City Council and ask for a second license for our ArcGIS system. So this will allow staff to be doing two different things simultaneously. And it will also help us with the new equipment that City Council has approved on our, looking at the system to the Trimble equipment that you approved to look through the system and record our assets. And so the price tag with that comes with support and software and training, and they will also help us with layering, help us look at what we have and help us to get it where we want it to be. So that price tag is the first one you see, and that combined with the license, the additional license, the server, and an upgrade to the existing license is $27,000. The second price that you see is currently we pay a maintenance cost of $2,700. That cost is going up to $18,700 just for the maintenance and support of that particular software in its upgraded form. It will be upgraded to the from what we have now, but ongoing, whether or not we choose to go with the $27,000, the extra license, we will have to go with the $18,700 in order to maintain what we have now in its upgraded form. So staff would suggest that you just go ahead and provide staff with the tools that they need to do what City Council wants as far as the development and the data mining of our current system. And so that would be our recommendation for City Council to approve that.
So can you tell us exactly what this does?
Absolutely.
Well,
Tell them, Kim.
Right. So when you ask what exactly it does, what are you referring to? I want to make sure I answer your question correctly.
you know, what does it do? It stores plans and such, is that?
Well, it's storing our information off of plans and then also our GPS point, state plan coordinate, to where we have an accurate representation. And you build an asset table for each feature that you put in there, to where you can log and document as much or as little information as you'd like. So if you want to put size and material and length, but also whether it's truly been surveyed or not, or you can attach as-built data to those line segments as well. It will help us to provide developers with accurate information about what we have out in the field.
Meaning infrastructure.
Infrastructure,
There you
yes.
go.
But there is
That was what I was looking for.
truly a lot more uses for GIS than what we are using for now. You can create all kinds of maps having to do with fire zones and FEMA zones and
So for quite
you know, Lonnie has created some fabulous maps about zoning and usage and things like that as well. We would be able to eventually offer some sort of interface for our customers on the website, to where they might be able to look up an address and see if, you know, something is available there. What zone are they in?
So we currently have this system, but we only have one license.
That is correct.
And in order to have another user, we explored the options and we found that we needed another license in order to have more than one user for that, which
Yes.
helps Lonnie with his load and helps
Absolutely.
things like that. So it's
Yes.
a little bit of a duplication, but at the same time, it's a necessary duplication.
I think so. That where the cost is increasing so much is because once you add a second user, you are forced to go to a server situation then.
And we explored this, Kurt, help me, didn't you do some preliminary work on something similar to this? And we decided not to go with that, I can't remember if it was the same system or something, but it was something different. And that system is now obsolete, correct, the one you
Yes.
looked at?
You talking about AMC?
Yeah,
So I use our GIS all the time.
yeah.
And so the user license, one will be retained by Lonnie and one will be retained by Kim, and they could work in two different areas. For example, Kim could be working on the infrastructure of the water and wastewater system, while Lonnie works on the development side of things that are happening in the city. And so we just need to provide the tools to staff to get it right. And this is our opportunity to do that. So a move in the right direction, building on the building blocks that we have, increments at a time to make a full picture of what we have to offer.
And I think, if I'm not mistaken, in the beginning, we talked about starting with one area and we can always add these that she's talking about now. We talked about that in the beginning as to increase this as we went, but.
When I came to council the first time and presented this, then it was made very plain that we were starting from scratch, from nothing, and we were gonna build, and in a few years, we would have to expand. Yes, you're exactly right.
Okay.
And that's where we're at now. I mean, anybody that was sitting at my computer could go in there and draw some lines. But now we're perfecting it and we're expanding on it, and this needs to be done regardless. Sometime soon it needs to be done. So I support this 100%, because this is just going to move Jasper one more step closer to accomplishing what we started 5 or 6 years ago.
And then this will help people like David too,
Yes.
because they could say, you got a new guy that doesn't know where the valve is, but you know, there goes on his map, he gets the GPS coordination, and they can find that valve a lot quicker if
That's
you have
right.
a break or a bust.
Yes, sir.
Allows for different operators, which we need now with development being what it is, and the things that we're gonna be doing as far as management goes in the future. Those are essential. But what it also allows us for about any single layer that you want to put in there in the future. And then that layer goes on, and then you just click or unclick those layers, and you can see right in front of you all the different, and they're precise. It's not a
Yeah, what is it? So I use GPS quite a bit.
It's GIS.
Yeah, and it's, I think 1 meter is mine, but y'all's is like an inch, right?
So our Trimble equipment has that precision
Yeah.
on it
Amazing.
that is less than an inch for horizontal and 1 to 2 inches on vertical. And actually Josh has been out, we've been taking some samples and bringing back the data, and it is amazing the precision that he is able to get on that. He is very often less than an inch on the vertical as well.
And at some future time, and I don't know how long this will be, but thanks to Lonnie, it'll be less time, then we will be able to map every single water line we have. Not just where it's at, but we also need to know the size.
Right. And
So that
materials.
will be of immense help to us going forward with what we need in water in our city.
One of the nice things about adding that second license is that with the server, all of the viewer stations that we have around the city will be able to be updated. They'll automatically update every evening. Currently, it's pushing the information out once a quarter.
Right.
So the ladies at the front who are maybe looking up an address to see if service is available may not have the most accurate information.
You ready for-
Thank you.
Council, this time I entertain a motion to approve this request.
Motion to approve Park GIS, in the amount of $27,625.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion by council?
The machines we're currently operating on can withstand the additional license and operate effectively.
Now, the way that they did my license is they brought me a separate laptop with the contract. I don't know if they're going to do you the same way.
That's a good question. I don't know. Currently, they actually reallocated Lonnie's license, and so I have it currently as we kind of work through these issues, and I don't have it on a laptop. I'm just using it on my
But they-
desktop.
They
So-
did furnish a laptop just for that.
Okay.
It was in with the cost.
So as long as the machines we're actually operating off of will be effective, and then secondly, our backups, whether they're on premise or off-site, just something for the city manager to be aware of in case of a crash for that server.
They should be, the server should be in the cloud, so I think.
Yes,
it would be-
they're
yes.
recommending a cloud to
Yeah.
save cost.
Perfect, thank you.
Yes.
One question, do we need to include the service, maintenance, service and support?
Staff would like for
18,000.
you to go ahead and give your blessing
Yeah.
on that upgrade as well, because that comes with upgraded software.
So would you modify your,
Yes, amend the motion to include the annual recurring cost, maintenance and support.
Second.
motion and a second for amendment? All in favor?
All right.
Opposed, same. And a motion and a second to, I need a motion and a second to do the whole, for the 27,625.
It's all together,
Yep.
included.
It's all together.
Yeah.
One motion.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
One
In
motion.
that case, we have carried that. Item 2 is consideration and approval of an FOG policy. It's a little foggy. And we will ask for ordinance number 2022-03, and Kim Dover, if you will, please.
Absolutely. So, what we have prepared for you this evening is fats, oils, and grease, which is abbreviated as FOG management policy, so that we can establish some requirements for developers and folks that are going through renovations, commercial facilities, obviously not residential, to have some guidelines as to what they actually need to install when they are going through that building process or renovation process. The city has code, it's chapter 82-270. You'll see in your packet, I've got one that has some red writing on it. What I did is, everything that is in black is what our existing code is. It's great as a start. It does not establish much other than we shall require a grease interceptor or a grease trap, whichever way you'd like to refer to it. The policy that Josh has primarily written, and I have just kind of polished up, and we've worked on researching other municipalities and what they use, is just something to formalize who needs a grease trap when they come in, where they need to have a grease trap, how it's going to be sized. It takes the guesswork out of folks in Lonnie's area from having to say, well, I don't really know what you need, or I don't have really any rationale for saying that you need this over this. It also establishes a maintenance program, though. I understand prior to my coming here, we had someone that was routinely doing some inspections of grease traps. That has been quite some time now, though. There is no one currently inspecting those, so we want to get back into that rhythm, that program, to where we are routinely going out and inspecting grease traps, making sure that they're being maintained by the user, that they're being cleaned out, being pumped out, and then it establishes penalties, basically, the ability to be able to say, notice a violation, this is not correct, you have X number of days to be able to fix it, and if not, then you have an escalation in regulatory fees that we would be able to charge.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for me?
At this point, council, any questions for Kim?
Oh, I did want to mention, this has been before the Water and Wastewater Committee a couple of times. We've gotten some good comments from Lonnie and from David. We've done a lot of research on what other municipalities do. We are kind of unique in that we don't have a policy. Most others around us do have something. So I don't think that this is going to be a surprise for our users, restaurants, the grocery stores, places like that, when they start seeing this coming out.
For the benefit of the public, it's fats, oil, and grease, right?
Fats, oils, and grease.
Not
Fog.
Not fog, but fog.
You could make it frog, and that would be with rags. So.
Council, entertain a motion that we approve ordinance number 2022-03, and that will become our official fog policy.
So moved.
And a second, please.
Second.
Any further discussion by council? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. The motion carries.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you. Item number 3 is consideration and approval of the purchase of a raw water pump, and we'll ask our water director, David Hall, to bring this to us.
Evening, Mayor, Council. I guess in your packet there, you included all of this in that packet, correct? You have an inventory before you also, before I get into the presentation.
Thanks, sir.
The raw water pumps that our committee members had asked for. So there is a inventory there, and the 100 horsepower vertical turbine pump capable of drawing 1 MGD to be replaced by Pro Pump Solutions with a 150 horsepower vertical turbine pump capable of pumping 1.5 MGD, with no other quotes being requested, because we must use the motor and the pump supplied by Pro Pump with number 1 to utilize with number 2, for the current panel box. If we use a different motor and pump, we would be required to install a new panel box at approximately a cost of an additional $50,000. So we can go with Pro Pump and install another pump beside the pump we have there now, which I think John is familiar with. Use the same panel box, just use a different type of cutoff switch, and we'll be able to save the $50,000, and it would only be $40,386.25 for the second raw water pump, which I don't know if it's already been spent or not, but this was supposed to be paid for by the bonds that our previous city manager got before we paid off our GFA notes. There was supposed to be some extra money available in that bond transfer that we had, to where we were going to replace both raw water pump number 1 and number 2. So that's what we're asking for, is to use that money in that bond program to replace number one raw water pump, along with some additional electrical assistance from, I think that y'all are familiar with the D. Wilson Electric, of $12,000 to help with the wiring and stuff of the raw water pump number one. So we're just asking, we've already replaced the number two, it's a 1.5 pump up from a 1 MGD pump. We're asking to use the bond money to take the second pump and take it on up from a 1.0 to a 1.5 pump, which allows us to use the water that the counties graciously give us from Grandview, the extra .33. We're actually able to pump that out on a daily basis with these pumps. So with, having both of them there, if something were to happen to one of them, we would be able to rotate to the other one.
Council, any discussions with David on this point?
Money is still available. Is it still sitting there?
Are you aware that cash out, and we took some money, it went into the enterprise fund is where it ultimately went, I think, so that's what he's talking about. Good.
And that's what we're, that, and then I think the painting of Lily Circle tank and Woodbridge tank was something else that Brandon envisioned being done with that money. And hopefully that tank will be painted this spring sometime.
Is that been to y'all's committee?
The tanks, one of them has, I can't remember, but I don't think
It's Lily, but
we hadn't
we'll
talked
bring
about
that up.
Woodbridge in a while.
Okay, so any further questions from council? Entertain a motion to approve the expenditure of $40,386.25 for the pump itself and $12,000 for the associated electrical equipment.
The labor, that's for installation. Labor and installation, yes. He's gonna do the,
Make a motion, we approve the purchase.
Okay, go ahead.
Second.
Any further discussion by council? All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, same. And motion carries. We get the pump.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
One question for David, aside from this. So our inventory, are you happy, sir, or are you happy with what we have in reserve, and do we need to consider expanding this reserve in the near future?
yes, sir, I was gonna.
There's
ask-
some.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry, sir.
Okay, so the next item is consideration of approval of purchase of inventory parts for the wastewater plant. David, if you would, tell us about that, what you're gonna put in there.
Yeah, we had a problem with a couple of our bearings at the wastewater plant, in the first couple of months of the year. We'd actually ordered it before Christmas. They didn't come in until, mid-March, and it didn't allow us to treat very much leachate, if any, for the first couple of months of this year, because without the bearings, we can't, they run the disc, and without the disc, we can't create air to keep the bugs alive. So, I guess we actually done the same thing last year, and we used that stock, and we didn't, I guess my fault, we didn't reorder. But we do have it operational now, and we are back in the leachate business. And I'm asking now to go ahead and, for stock, have every bearing that would replace one side of our aeration basin that we'll have in stock in case, because of the lead time and, the problems that we're having with supply chain, we'll have those in stock and won't have to go through that again.
Thank you, David. Discussion by council. Entertain a motion to approve the request for $13,675.15 for stock inventory.
So moved.
Second, please.
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same.
Sonia, I promise I'm not adding to your list, but supply chain strategy, I don't think is something we've ever really, I mean, we've dabbled in it, but there's never been, anything formally that we did. We did do a lot of work early on some fleet management, some other things, but just something that just seems to come up a lot when we're ready to go and waiting on the mailman.
Item 5 is consideration and approval of a zero-turn mower. This was budgeted for this year by council. So, David, would you bring this to us, please?
Yes, we've obtained 2 bids. One from John Deere for $14,951.22, and one for $14,856 for a zero-turn mower that the water department will be using to cut the grass at the lift stations, tanks, and treatment facilities. And our mowers that we have presently are hand-me-downs from the street department that, to my knowledge, we've never had a new zero-turn mower. So it's the very first.
Nelson's Kubota now, right?
Yes, sir.
Nelson Kubota?
Yes.
Was that in your budget?
Yes. Well, yes, ma'am, I'm sorry. And I think it was a little bit less than, I want to say it was like 12.5 or something, but because of everything that's going on, our price actually went up that much in 1 year. It was 12.5 last year, and that was the same over, that was the price.
Nothing runs like a Kubota.
I make a motion, we approve purchase of the mower for water department.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to approve the purchase of the $14,856 mower from Nelson Tractor.
Just have an enclosure on it, John?
Any further discussion?
Mayor, Nelson came in at $14,856. I see John Deere for $14,951. I do not see a Nelson tractor quote in my packet. Is it just me?
Yeah.
Okay. The other question I had, I know last time we went through this with the street crew, the process, I'm assuming all local vendors were approached.
Yes, that were the quality of mower of the Kubota.
Awesome, thank you.
Any further questions by council?
We also reached out to the state, Atlanta Kubota holds the state contract, and they currently have none of these mowers in stock, and I asked if there was any in the state of Georgia, and they did say Jasper. Nelson, I guess, has some ordered. I don't know if they're on site yet, but they do have the style they want ordered, so.
Thank you.
Yes, we checked and made sure this was the lowest price we could get on the Kubota. The 2 Kubotas we have now are both, I mean, I think they're both over 10 years old, so, I mean, we've got great use out of them.
My John Deere's 25 years old,
David, hand them down to the street department since I used to hand you down everything.
These mowers we have now, they're done. I mean, that we're gonna enjoy having another mower. It was getting to the point where it was more to keep it up than.
Council, I have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, same. We'll get the Kubota. Item 6 is consideration and approval of a purchase of meter inventory for water distribution. And David, once again.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we're looking at getting some stock of our meters, but as you all know, we're selling them as fast as we put them on the shelf. So we're going to try to jump ahead and buy some stock inventory because of supply chain. We're going to try to jump ahead and have more in stock, than we usually do. Usually we can keep these purchases to where our city manager can just approve them, but I think now we're getting to the point with 2 or 3 of the subdivisions that are going in to where we need to buy a little bit more than normal at one time. That's why we're having to bring it before y'all.
And I think this bring before us is a total of $23,187. Is Is that correct, David?
Yes, sir. And it's on the budget.
Any discussion by council? I entertain a motion to approve the expenditure of $23,187 for meters for distribution for the water department.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, same. Stock up on meters.
Thank you, council, Mayor.
Thank you, David.
Just to finish this part up, let me say that the administrative committee is looking at purchasing limits. There may be a good need to increase department heads and city managers' purchasing limits on certain things that we need, the city needs to get quickly. I'm not ready to make that recommendation yet, but it's something Ann and I are discussing. We'll present to you later.
Specifically on the enterprise fund.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great, thanks.
Item 7, we have an offer, conditional offer and acceptance of a fire chief, Mr. John Sherrill III. I would entertain a motion at this time that we approve that conditional offer and acceptance.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion by council on this?
Thank you, council.
Good job, safety committee, good job, Sonia, and secure this individual.
I want to add
Been
my
a great
special
group
thanks
effort.
to all of you for going through that. And I appreciate the effort that council put into making this decision for our city. It was well done. And item 8 is,
Need a vote?
Didn't need a vote.
Need to vote.
we do. I will entertain a motion at this time.
You already got a motion.
Got a motion.
Second.
You just
Got
need to vote.
discussion.
All in favor of Mr. John Sherrill III being our new fire chief, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. And the motion carried unanimously. Item 8, consideration and approval of a conditional offer of employment for our police chief. And I am proud to say that even though we did a national search, we wound up with Matt Dawkins as our choice for police chief. So at this time, I would entertain a motion from council that we approve the offer and acceptance for Matt Dawkins to be our fire chief.
So moved.
Police chief.
And, excuse me, our police chief. Have a
Second.
motion and a second. Any discussion by council on this?
Just a really, both positions, very highly qualified candidates, very excited to be in that place to deal with the folks we did.
And it was exciting to have as many applications as we
Yeah.
did.
35, approximately 35 for
For
each
both.
position.
Mhm.
So it was
From all over.
tremendous response.
Yeah, all the way from Hawaii, right? Well,
It was an exhausting process. It was
It
well
was
done.
that.
It was well done, and I feel like, here again, we have gone out nationally to get the best person for our city. I admire this council greatly for taking that attitude. And a special thanks to our HR director who did such a good job of setting all this up.
thank you, Mayor. You're right.
Gonna take a vote on that, sir?
We are.
Okay.
We are. Just as I get done talking. So, at this point, I have a motion and I have a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. And please note that it was a unanimous vote.
Yes, sir.
For the press that's here, when will we hand out a press release?
I'll hit the button as soon as I get back to the office.
It'll go out tonight.
You will receive a press release tonight. Thank you. Item number 9 is consideration and approval of the Perot cabin removal. And I'll ask our wonderful city manager, Sonia Jennings, to bring that to us.
So, as City Council is aware, a steering committee was formed. It is a combination and a collaboration of city council members, community organizations, and your citizenry in regards to the vision of what Perot Park could be. The steering committee had their first meeting, and there were some expectations of decisions to come out of that first meeting. One being what to do with the existing structure that we finally refer to as the Perot cabin. The committee had a lengthy discussion about it, a very healthy, balanced discussion about the future of that existing structure. And the final decision out of that committee was to make a recommendation to City Council to remove that structure from its current location. They made that recommendation with the caveat that they would like to use some of the existing stone foundations to pay homage to the owner, the original owner of the property, by putting up some plaques and incorporating that stone in different sites of what the vision is for the property and how that develops. So although we would remove the cabin, we would definitely continue to respect that particular property as it should be respected. It just doesn't, the current placement of the cabin just doesn't fit within the vision and the design of what the steering committee thinks. And so we had 2 council members present in that meeting. If you'd like to add any additional comments on that. So
I think the potential use of the stones that are in the building gives us a real opportunity. Could be used as a retaining wall somewhere on the property. It could be used just as the chimney and the structure itself with a plaque there and possibly some wrought iron fencing around it. So there's some opportunities that I think would be interesting and excited about getting moving on it.
This project's been going on for quite some time, and I don't think that there was ever much expectation that any of those structures were going to survive. I think when we first started talking about developing that property in 2017, I believe it was, there may have been an opportunity for salvage, but there was no interest at that time from anybody that occurred. There have been some suggestions about possible Eagle Scout projects and so forth and so on, but there had not been anybody that took the lead on that. Nobody likes historic preservation more than I do. I've tried to faithfully restore my 100-plus-year-old home and not my only commitment to this history, particularly in this area. So I think we did a noble effort in trying to. There was some pushback recently. I think we did our best to try to accommodate that, and it just wasn't possible.
So we would like a council to vote on removal of the cabin. So
Council will entertain a motion to approve the Perot cabin removal.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion by any members of council? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. And the motion carried. Item Now 10 is consideration and approval of the adoption of Mountain Way. And Lonnie Wise, if you will, please tell us about this.
Okay, the little short street that turns right there next to AutoZone, right above Burger King, that goes up into where the assisted living is behind Ingles. That's going into Mr. Grant Smelt's development that he has been working on behind Ingles. And we all thought that that was a city street. And so a few years back when we were paving everything, we paved that street also. But it was still in the Wigton family's name. And so Mr. Smelt has now purchased that street to going into his development. And he has sent a plat in the city's name and with a legal description and everything, asking the city to take over that entrance due to some of his lenders didn't want a private street going into a state highway. And so, the private street. So it needs to be a city street to satisfy some of his lenders and move forward with his development. And he has talked about possibly asking the city to take over the streets in his development once it is completed and they meet all the city requirements. So the request is the city adopt that short street and so he can move forward with his development.
Now, does that street meet our current requirements?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
As far as I know, there's no reason to not adopt it.
Can I ask a question, Mayor?
Yes.
Please.
Is his development done?
The development hasn't even started.
Okay, so we'd anticipate heavy truck traffic going in through that street to do the development?
Well, I mean, I don't know which way they're going to enter it with their construction, whether they're going to go up Samuel McGee, up to the post office, or if they're coming in beside the Ingles building, or which way they're going to enter it on construction. That could definitely be, I mean, that's the only two ways to get into it at this time, yes. They had also talked about a street, constructing a street that comes out on 515. I don't know if that has happened or not with the other landowners that's involved. So,
They'd rather come out on 515 than 53?
Well, there's multiple access points
Yes.
for this development.
yeah.
Are you going towards some bond or performance bond or something like that?
Well, a couple of thoughts that, you know, sometimes the developer wants you to take the street before they completed the subdivision, and commercial or residential, and if you take the street, then, you know, they're building out there for another year, sometimes another 2 years, and you have concrete trucks and sod trucks and construction trucks, and at the end of the year or 2 years, you got a torn up street that, you know, you got it, you own it, you gotta repair it. So, you know, I'm no construction expert, but that's an issue. You know, secondly, if we take it, you know, a bond might be a good idea because I don't know what inspection has been done of it in the construction of it. It's going into a state highway, we want to be sure DOT's approved it going in. And finally, I think we need a deed. You know, if we're going to take it, then I'd want a formal deed at some point. I'm a little scared about taking it now unless he's going to do some type of guarantee once he's through building to come back and repave the street, just so we don't have to do it.
You living life right now, well, you living all this.
I got it. Well, I mean, in my conversations with him, I'm sure he would, I mean, the conversation we've had, I'm sure that he would put some kind of guarantee or whatever was needed to make this happen. Because he's getting, I mean, that guarantee could also be applied to Sammy McGee, because that's a public street right now. And so it could affect it. So.
Sammy McGee's not public?
Excuse me? Sammy McGee is
But
public
he
street.
could tear it up just as easy.
Yes.
Would it make sense for you to communicate with this gentleman's attorney? He's a very reputable builder, I'm sure, and I will share that his presentation to us was far and above beyond what most people have been bringing to us. Maybe it would just be more efficient if y'all.
Well, maybe me and Lonnie together could work on that.
That's fine. Yeah.
So let's, and I'd entertain a motion to table for a month. And that's not gonna hurt anything until we get back in touch with him.
So
Second.
Did I hear a motion?
Yeah.
You did.
Motion
And a
second.
second, yeah.
Have a motion and a second to table. Any further discussion by council? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. And we'll table that until we get back in touch with Mr. Snelling. Item 13 is consideration of approval of a veterans event. Ryan, tell us about this.
Okay, the Veterans Administration, DAV, called, and they're, for the last 2 or 3 years, when COVID would allow it, they have did a demonstration at Lee Newton Park and talked to elementary kids, 4th, 5th, 6th grade, and they have set up for May the 24th from 9:30 to 11:30 to have 300 5th graders there. And they're going to discuss the Veterans Administration, the DAV, and they want to present a demonstration to the proper way to dispose of a flag, burn a flag, and that type thing, and it gives some explanation why they do it a certain way. And they just wanted to bring this to y'all's attention and make sure that nobody had a problem with this presentation at Lee Newton Park on the 24th.
The 24th.
Yes.
I think at the same time, there's they'll be visiting the jail, and something.
It's a field day trail.
Yeah.
I mean, yes.
They'll be walking the area.
Do we have anything else on the 24th?
No, the middle school's already reserved that too. That, I just didn't have the dates.
Got it, okay.
Are they gonna actually burn the flag, or
Yes.
just tell them how?
No, they're actually going to burn the flag.
They have a depository there.
Yeah.
People leave
They're old flags.
old flags.
And they have also requested that the city fire department be there and everything. I mean, they're taking all the precautions and.
Is it any type of, how visible is it to the public that they're burning a flag? And do we want to do some type of PR release to say, this is an approved method of flag burning?
I think they are going to do a press release and everything because it will be open also, the way I understood it, to the public.
It's done.
Well, I just didn't want.
Everybody coming through 53, they're out there burning the flag, I agree. It's right there on the public highway. Look at that bunch burning the flag up there.
Council entertain a motion to approve.
So moved. Second.
Any further discussion by council? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. The motion carries. And Lonnie, that will complete you for the night.
Yes, sir.
I'm gonna go back up now and pick up item number 10. Consideration. Excuse me. Item number 11, consideration of approval of the separation of job descriptions. And before I say anything else, that will be something else wrong, would you come in here and save me?
Absolutely, Mayor. That's what I'm here for. What in your package, you will find two job descriptions that I've created for currently one position. I think it's no secret to City Council that your current singular position of the Director of Finance and the City Clerk is a large position and a very big position that one person, it's hard to keep all of those balls in the air whenever they're trying to do both jobs. So what I'm requesting of City Council is to allow us to split those two positions so that they each are individual positions in the city. Now, that will increase your FTE amounts by 1. So by splitting that position, you will have an additional position within the city. But I think it's a necessary thing that we have to do in order to make sure that all the duties of both offices are covered. And I have written job descriptions for both. I know you had originally one job description. I've actually increased some of the duties on both sides to substantiate having two positions for this one position. So my request would be that City Council agrees with the splitting of that position, if you will. So.
Any questions of Sonia, Council, at this point in time?
I don't. I think that's a good idea to split them. We had put them in the past where they were together, and at that time, it was okay, but now with the growth and everything, I think you're exactly right. They do need to be split.
Now, included also is a salary range towards the back after the job descriptions for the Director of Finance and the City Clerk separated. So I have provided you with a minimum, middle, and maximum for these positions to fall anywhere on that spectrum. So when you vote on that, you would be voting on not only approval of the job descriptions, but also approval of the salary ranges.
So what did you use to determine those salary ranges?
I used I went out and looked at the different positions in other localities. I also used some information from how we had those split up at my former locality, and I feel like that they are comparable to other positions such as that. So.
Thanks.
Council, I would entertain a motion for approval of separating the jobs of Director of Finance and the job of City Clerk.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion by council?
So I think these are two of the most important jobs in our organization, and I think for quite some time, without being specific, there have been issues with both because they were combined, particularly with documentation over things in the past. So I'm glad to see us get to a point where we are supporting this.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Any further discussion by council? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Item 12 is consideration and approval of a job description reclassification. And Sonia, can you please tell us about this?
So as City Council is aware, the city manager's position is a huge position. And with Jasper growing at an unprecedented rate, there are a lot of balls that the city manager has to keep in the air, and she needs some help. So what I'm proposing is a reclassification of an existing position, which is our special projects coordinator position, into an assistant city manager position to help take some of that load and that oversight over specific departments off of the city manager's plate so they can concentrate on other areas that city council needs for the city manager to concentrate on. I've provided the city council with a proposed job description. There is one change that I need to note is in the signature section. When I wrote this, I didn't change it from the director of finance clerk, so that would be the only change that I would have on this existing job description. In addition, I have, in the same way that I went out and investigated positional costs for that position at other localities and where I came from, I have provided City Council with a proposed salary range for that as well. So it would be the city manager's request that City Council please reclassify this position to be an assistant city manager position to help alleviate some of the duties that the current city manager is holding.
So there are gonna be a bunch of old timers who say, look at here, now we got two of them, and I just wanna make sure that for the benefit of the public, that they we're not very often touted for the changes that we've been making, where we have essentially, as a group, rebuilt the foundation of a modern city, from a place of employment, from a delivering services, again, turn this organization into something that we are proud of because of its professionalism and the quality of candidates that we're bringing here when we have job openings. And I just want to make sure that I want to say that this has impacted us. The need for this has been recognized for quite some time, and I'm glad in such short order that you were courageous enough really to even bring it to us. And let's see how it goes, okay?
Yes, sir.
So I did that thankless job for about 3 months, and I want to,
We're not gonna have to hear all that.
yes, we are. And I want to reiterate that for anyone who has never done that job, you will be screaming for some help, because trust me, I would do this a different way if I had to do it again. And that's all I have to say on that. So at this point, I would entertain a motion so that we approve the reclassification of that position.
Thank you, sir.
Absolutely.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Oh, Kurt, why don't you talk?
If I may, for the press that is here, it is very important that we recognize what today is. We are ending Women's History Month with a city organization being restructured where our ladies are actually leading the entire organization. I do not want that to fall on deaf ears. This is history in the making, so I would ask, before we leave this evening, the ladies that are present, I believe it is appropriate to have a picture of all of you, including the elected, because I'm very proud of the ladies that serve and that work here. And specifically, Mr. Poole, in September of 2021, we had a conversation about pictures and documents that the public did not deem that they wanted. And so I took those in. You and I worked together on that project. I am slowly sifting through those. And I bring that to point because this week I do not want the headline to be about a cabin. I would much rather the headline be about ladies leading Jasper. When an organization exhausts all efforts and resources to hand something over, as you did, to the public, you offered our citizenry every opportunity to take that history that you had. I'm the proud owner of it for now. I've passed some of it off to appropriate families where it belongs for preservation. You did the due diligence. This organization did the same with this cabin. I do not want that overlooked either. So please make note of that. So thank you, ladies. Nothing further.
Thank you.
Any further discussion by council? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say aye. Motion carries unanimously. Council, at this point, I will entertain a motion that we enter executive session for the purposes of discussing legal matters.
Shall we let them get their picture?
We will get this picture first, so everybody doesn't have to go. So, We'll delay the executive session for 2 seconds.
Just a second.